The package arrived on a Tuesday, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine, smelling faintly of dust and GAMPF, no return address. Only a faded postmark from a coastal village Elara. Didn't recognize. Inside lay a bundle of old letters, tied with a frayed black ribbon, and a single, unmarked journal bound in cracked, midnight blue letter. A note slipped out, written in sputtery unfamiliar script. For Elara Vance, keeper of lost things, perhaps. You can find where they belong. Elara ran a small, struggling archive special issue NGN, preserving forgotten histories, diaries, unsent letters, fragments of ordinary lives, this unsolicited. Donation intrigued her. The letters were mundane, weather reports, local gossip from a place called Haven Sand, dated decades prior. But the journal, it felt different, cold, heavy in a way its size didn't explain. Its pages were blank, utterly, perfectly blank, not a single mark, not even foxing. That night, waking late under the archive's single desk lamp, Elara felt an absurd compulsion. She picked up a fountain pen, touched its nib to the journal's first creamy page, and froze. Her hand ached. A deep, burn, deep throb centered in her knuckles. She set the pen down. The ache vanished. The next morning, Elara found writing on the first page. Her own hand, writing a description of a trivial argument she had with her neighbor about recycling bins, word for word, but she hadn't written it. The page felt unnaturally cold, puzzled and unnerved. She locked the journal in her desk drawer. That evening, preparing dinner, she sliced her finger chopping vegetables, a sharp sting, a bead of crimson. Instantly, the ache in her knuckles returned, fierce and insistent. She ignored it. The next morning, the journal was on her desk, open below the recycling bin entry. In her hand was a vivid description of the cut, the sting, the sight of blood, the metallic tang in the air, a small hurt. It concluded but sharp, a crimson punctuation mark on the mundane. Fear prickled Elara's scalp. The journal was an recording events. It was recording sensations, specifically pain, physical and emotional. She tried burning it. The flames scattered out inches from the cover. Throwing it away resulted in it reappearing on her pillow, burying it in the tiny backyard. Saw it back on her desk by dawn, pristine, smelling faintly of damp earth. The entries grew bolder. A stubborn toe, captured with excruciating detail. The dull throb of a headache after a sleepless night, described so accurately it echoed in her skull. Then came the emotional wounds, a fleeting moment of loneliness walking past a lone couple, the sharp pang of seeing her ex name pop up on social media. The journal captured them all in her own voice, dissecting them with cold precision. A hollow space beneath the ribs. It wrote about the loneliness, like swallowing glass. It described the social media pain. Worse after each entry, Elara felt numb. The actual memory of the pain or sorrow faded, replaced by the cold, clinical description on the page. It was as if the journal was consuming the feeling, leaving only the hollow shell of the experience. Driven by a desperate need to understand, Elara researched Haven Sand. Records were scarce. A fishing village largely abandoned. After a series of tragic drownings decades ago, local lore whispered of a reclusive woman, Agnes Morrow, dubbed the Sorrow-Scribe. She was said to collect people's pains, writing them down to lighten their load, using a special journal. But those she helped were described as becoming strangely empty. Listless shells. Agnes vanished shortly before the village died. The journal was Agnes's, and it was hungry. Elara resolved to stop feeling anything. She became an automaton, avoiding interactions, suppressing reactions, numbing herself with routine. For days, the journal remained blank. Hope flickered. Then her cat Morgan, her only companion. Didn't he come home? Elara searched frantically, calling until her voice was raw. A deep, primal dread settled in her gut. Late that night, sitting numb and hollow on her sofa, she heard a faint scratching at the door. Not Morgan's familiar meow. Awake, dragging sound, she opened the door. Morgan lay on the mat, alive, but one hind leg was crushed, mangled, likely by Icar. The little creature looked up at her, eyes wide with pain and terror, emitting a pitiful broken mew. Elara, skillfully constructed, numbness shattered, grief, horror, and helpless love crashed over her inner devastating wave, a raw sob tore from her throat. As she gathered the trembling animal, the ache in her knuckles exploded into white, hard agony. Her hand felt like it was being crushed in a vice. She cried out, dropping to her knees, cradling Morgan with one arm while her other hand spasmed uncontrollably. The journal, lying on the coffee table, flew open, pages riffled violently. Elara watched in horror as her own hand, acting independently, grabbed the fountain pen. It moved with jerky, unnatural speed, scratching frantically across a blank page. Not words, not at first, jagged, frantic lines, dark as splotches of ink like bloodstains. Then, the script emerged, her handwriting distorted by the speed, and the pain radiating from her hand. Pain, not mine, his, Mao, small heart, racing rapid, fast against my ribs, broken thing. Warm from mad cold iron sent blood, oh God. Blood smell filling nose, mouth choking, leg wrong. Ankles bone white through fur screaming inside my head, his screaming silent screaming vibrating through my hands, helpless, anguish, tearing, ripping inside my chest, cavity empty, then full of broken glass, then empty again. Cold, so cold. He looks at me, trust, betrayal. I failed. The pain is a living thing, yard. Black worm burrowing deeper. The pen tore the paper. Ink spattered. Elara. Yes. Hand screamed with the phantom. Echo of Morgan's agony amplified. Dissected. She felt the cut stare as if it were her own nervous system. The numbness was gone, replaced by a terrifying, overwhelming empathy for the suffering animal. Chan led through her own tortured hand onto the page. As the last jagged word, deeper, was scrawled, Morgan gave a final, shuddering sigh in her arms and went still. The agony in Elara's hand ceased abruptly. A profound, chilling numbness washed over her, deeper than before. The crushing grief for Morgan faded like smoke, only a hollow ache remained. The journal lay open, the page a chaotic mass of ink and violent script, radiating cold. Elara looked down at Morgan. As still form, she felt nothing, just a vague sense of absence. She carefully placed the small body on the sofa. Her gaze drifted to the journal. The chaotic writing was already seeming to settle. The ink darkened, the frantic lines becoming neater, more deliberate, transforming into her familiar, precise script, coldly detailing the event, consuming it. She understood Agnes Morrow now. The Sorrow-Scribe. The journal didn't just record pain, it fed on it. It used its keeper as a conduit, draining the raw sensation to sustain itself, leaving only numbness and the cold artifact behind, and to keep it fed. The keeper was driven to seek out pain, to witness suffering, to become a parasite on others' sorrow, just to feel something other than the encroaching void within themselves. A notification chimed on her phone. A news alert. Major accident on Elm Street Bridge. Multiple casualties reported. Elara looked at the notification, then at the journal. The numbness inside her yawned, yet vast and terrifying. But beneath it, a new sensation stirred. No grief, no empathy, a terrible, hollow hunger, the kind of hunger that could only be sated by proximity to raw, unfiltered agony. The journal lay open, waiting, its blank pages radiating cold invitation. Her hand, the hand that had Chen led Morgan's death throes, twitched, not in pain, in anticipation. The ache wasn't gone. It had changed. It was the ache of the void, demanding to be filled. The Sorrow-Scribe had a new keeper. Elara picked up her car keys. The numbness was worse than pain, and the journal promised a terrible, temporary reprieve. She needed to feel something, anything, even if it wasn't her own, even if it destroyed her. She walked towards the door, the cold weight of the journal already settling into her soul. The archive of lost things had just acquired its most terrible exhibit, her own capacity to care. The hunt for sorrow had begun.